Hey everybody, this is Andy Malbuff, and this video is going to take a look at how we can start out using computation layer in Desmos Activity Builder to give teachers feedback on their dashboard to check for correct responses and incorrect responses from students. So let's go ahead and dive into this. On this screen, you're looking at the student preview of a question. It's a multiple choice question, and it asks them simply, what's the sum of angles in any quadrilateral? Well, because this is multiple choice, this gives us immediate feedback from a teacher perspective. Up here in the dashboard preview, this is what would show on a teacher dashboard if they're monitoring the student, whether synchronously or asynchronously. So if a student picks an incorrect answer, you'll see a little icon of an X show up here indicating that it's an incorrect answer. If the student selects the correct answer, the teacher gets a check mark indicating that the student has gotten it correct. So what does the teacher have to do to make this happen? Well, really nothing. So I'm exiting preview mode there, and now we're into the editing portion of this. And what this is simply a note component with a question. There's nothing fancy there at all. And there's also a multiple choice component here. And I've typed in the answers that you just saw a few moments ago. And the teacher is asked to select the correct answer. If the teacher selects a correct answer, this is the one that Activity Builder will check for correctness, if you will. Now, I want you to see what would happen if you check the box where it says ask student to explain their answer. And students would then be prompted to explain their thinking. Let's go back into preview mode. In the dashboard preview, if a student selects 90 degrees, they get the indicator that it's wrong, or the teacher gets the indicator that it's wrong. But if the correct answer is chosen, it's not a check mark, it's a dot. And what this symbol means, or what this icon means, is there's nothing necessarily wrong yet on this screen. It's just Desmos doesn't know how to handle the explain your thinking. It's not able to auto correct this. So, just be aware that if you choose to have students explain their thinking, you will not be able to get auto graded feedback on your teacher dashboard. Teachers can also get feedback from checkboxes. Checkboxes are basically multiple select options where you can pick more than one option. So if a student here chooses 10x over 2 is a correct answer, there's an X there. Even though 10x divided by 2 does simplify to 5x, it's not the only one of these that does do that. So if a student selects all of them that are correct simplifications, or that simplify down to 5x, then the teacher gets the check mark. And if even one of them is wrong, these are different options that would be all marked with an X. So let's exit the preview mode and see what has to be done to make that happen. Again, we start out with a simple note component, nothing fancy there. We've now got a checkbox component that comes from over here on the left. And in the checkbox component, I've indicated the 3 answers that I wanted to be marked correct. So it's really nothing any fancier than that. The next type of screen we're going to look at for checking whether students enter correct answers or not is ordering lists here. And here's an example of one I put together where we ask students to order numbers from smallest to largest. They basically are allowed to drag them. So if we just do a quick reorder, I get an X here because these are not correctly ordered from smallest to largest. In fact, these two are fine, but these two need to change. Once a student does that, the teacher gets the check mark. But if even one of them is out of order, they get the X. So how does that look from a teacher perspective? Let's exit and go into the edit mode. And here's what we have to do to make this work. You'll notice I can't select over here anything specific because we're asking students to order. So if I click these 3 dots over here on the right-hand upper portion of the component, there's an option to use the order as the answer key. So the order that the answers are entered is the order we want to use as an answer key, and Desmos, when providing it for a student, will automatically randomize those. So all you have to do is enter the values in the order you want them to be answered in, go into these three dots, check use order as answer key. The next type of screen we're going to look at is checking for correct input when we have a math input box. Okay, so here we're going to go back to the sum of angles in a quadrilateral. And we already saw earlier that when a student enters something incorrectly, there's an X provided up here. But when a student enters 180 in a math input box, Desmos doesn't know what to make of that. Likewise, if we type in the correct answer of 360, even if the student presses submit, we as a teacher don't get the feedback we need because Desmos doesn't know what you want to do with this input box. So let's see how we can adjust that. I'm going to leave preview mode. And now you'll see here just the standard note component again. And here on the bottom below that is a math input component. Here's where we're going to put in our first instance of computation layer. I want to put something in the background of this math input component that tells it to check what the student inputs. So to do that, I'm hovering over this icon that's Edit Computation Layer Script. And once I click that, I go into the script in the background. And there's nothing there right now. This is blank. Well, if I want to add something to allow Desmos to check for a correct answer, we have to use what's called a sync. A sync is something that tells this to connect to the component and do something special. Now, one of the most simple syncs that we can use is the correct sync. So I'm going to start typing the word correct. As soon as I get several letters in, it auto prompts things that it recognizes. And you can see here, correct is a sync. So I'm going to choose that. Now, as soon as I choose that, I get a little warning, okay, because Desmos recognizes this is incomplete. It doesn't know what to do with it. Now, what I want to do is I want the number entered here to be compared to what I want my answer to be. So what I'm going to type in is this and this numeric value. So what it's saying is we're going to mark as correct this numeric value, but I have to tell it what numeric value to compare to. So I'm going to choose my 360 here. So I'm going to put equals 360. So let's look at this in a little more detail. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit here. So Desmos will check for correctness if the student's input matches the numeric number 360. If a student types in anything other than a numeric value of 360, Desmos assumes it's incorrect. So let's see how this looks in preview mode. That's all we need right there. When I click done, you'll see that icon I just clicked on down here is green, meaning there's active computation layer in there. There's no warning symbol. It should be good to go. So if I click preview and I click a wrong answer in here, like 180, Desmos doesn't recognize 180 as being correct because it's not the numeric value 360. Any number I put in here at all, 9,000, all of those are wrong. The only thing that will be considered correct is 360. So that's how we can use a correct sync in computation layer to check for math input being correct. We can also use computation layer to help us check table input by a student. Here you see a fairly simple table with 4 rows and 2 columns. And students are asked to evaluate 3 different values of x in this function, f of x equals 3x plus 4. So ideally, what we want is students to input the following numbers. Now, if they do so, you'll see a check mark up here, but that's only because we put something in the computation layer that allows Desmos to check that. If even one of the answers is off, notice this changes to an X. So what does that look like in the background of computation layer? I'm going to exit preview mode, and here's my note. Again, nothing fancy there. Here's a table, and I've set that table up to have these two columns here, x and f of x. Now, what I want to point out is how this table is organized. Because the first row is already occupied by f and f of x, that's not considered the first row in terms of what computation layer is going to view. So let's go ahead and look at what I've got in here already. Now, first of all, to explain this first row up here is very lightly shaded. I want you to see that it starts with a pound sign. Anytime you write something in computation layer with a pound sign in front, it's basically notation that computation layer doesn't act on. It's notation for you, the author. So I put this in here, and I put this in here for people that look at this to recognize it's a note to them. So when you see something that's identified as cell numeric value 1, 2, that's going to refer to the cell in the table that's in the first row, second column. So here's how we build this correct sync and have it check our table. Now, we already saw just a moment ago using the correct sync will tell Desmos to check something. Well, instead of this numeric value, I've got a table. So I've got several different values to check. So we have to tell it which one to check. So I'm going to do a little highlighting here first. All right, I'm going to highlight that and blow this up. I'm going to have it check for correctness on cell 1, 2, meaning the cell that's in row 1, column 2, and I want that cell numeric value to be 4. That's the source. It's called the source and computation layer script. So instead of this numeric value, it's this cell numeric value, because we have to check a certain cell and we have to tell it which cell to check. Now, not only do I want that cell to be correct, but I also want others to be correct. So basically, here's the second condition. We want the cell that's in the second row, second column, to be occupied with the number 7. And we also want the cell that's in row 3, column 2, to be populated with the number 10 when the student submits. And since we want all 3 of these conditions to happen at once or together, we tie them together with the and. So if this happens, and this happens, and this happens, if all 3 of those are correctly entered, Desmos Activity Builder will mark this correct. So that's a quick introduction on how, as a teacher, we can set up the teacher dashboard to get indicators as to whether students are correct or not.